we could use some more loyalty, I will tell you that.
Needless to say, Donald Trump was not a Boy Scout, and there are no Boy Scouts in the Trump White House. Joining us now, Joyce Vance, a former U.S. attorney for the Northern District of Alabama, and back with us, Ken Vogel. And Joyce Vance, to this advice that lawyers are giving to Trump staffers, don't lie for the president, what's your reaction to that?
Well, it's awfully good advice, Lawrence, because lying to a federal agent who's conducting an investigation is enough to get you your own personal ticket to federal prison. None of these witnesses want to be converted from witnesses to subjects or targets of this investigation. Their best way of maintaining their status as witness is to continue to tell investigators the truth, to produce documents, to not withhold material information, to answer questions honestly. Prosecutors love to say that it's the cover-up that hangs people up, and that's true time and time again in these public corruption investigations.
And Ken, I think you and I know that there are a lot of politicians over the years who you would have to say that to their staffs because their staffs love them, were devoted to them, and were with them for many years, and could feel like maybe it's not lying if they're just trying to shade the truth in the favor of the politician. But this White House is the leakiest White House we have ever seen. It almost seems like the Trump staff does not need the warning to tell the truth about Donald Trump under oath, because they seem to be telling the dark truths to the New York Times and you guys and the Washington Post almost every day.
Yeah, that's right, Lawrence. And it's not just the leaking, it's also the infighting. And there are concerns among the Trump legal team that that prosecutors and the special counsel will use these rifts and fissures between the staff that have long been festering to essentially pit the staffers against each other and other Trump associates against one another, to use something that they might get from one staffer or one associate to leverage something more out of another associate. This, my sources tell me, has led to some dissent within Trump's legal team about how to handle this, about how there's also dissent about document production, pace of document production. And so we're seeing some of these tensions play themselves out in the legal defense in a way that I think is extremely unhelpful for the president and for his team.
So, Joyce, this point that Ken made sounds hugely important. For example, the special prosecutor, just by reading the paper, watching TV, knows very clearly that Steve Bannon hates Jared Kushner, is doing everything he can to hurt Jared Kushner. They are investigating Jared Kushner. Does the special prosecutor's team go, do they think we should be talking to Steve Bannon specifically about Jared Kushner?
I would suspect that the special counsel's team will talk to everyone about everything. And by that I mean they'll talk to all of the available witnesses to get their view of what happened. And then they'll see how those versions line up. And it will be the outlier versions, the details that don't match up. If 9 people are in agreement and one person is saying something different, something that perhaps is more beneficial to the administration, those people become the littlest zebras, the witnesses that Mueller will cull out of the herd, because if they have some exposure for obstruction or perjury or false statements themselves, then it may be possible to flip them and have them testify as to what really happened here.
And Ken, there are reports indicating that the really decisive conversations about firing James Comey, which may be the single most important area of the investigation in the end, occurred in New Jersey on a weekend when Steve Bannon wasn't there, and that Ivanka Trump was there, Steve Miller was there, and that might be the spot where that the special prosecutor really wants to penetrate. But in terms of Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump, for example, you can't have a spouse testify against another spouse, so that might be a tricky one.
Yeah, that's right, but it does get to the key point that the former U.S. attorney raised, which is that it becomes about obstruction. It becomes about the cover-up. Obviously, the firing of Comey is the key piece of that cover-up, but even the discussions that led up to that firing are critical to establishing the case and to potentially establishing that someone has misrepresented what went on that's the area that Comey is really homing in on, according to everyone who I've talked to about this.
Joyce Vance and Ken Vogel, thank you both for joining us tonight. Really appreciate that.
Thanks, Lawrence.
Thank you.
Tonight's last word is next, and it is a last word about